People who have heard me a few years ago have a bad news. Yes, I still have the same accent. Major General Hayden, General Falconer, thank you very much, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Allow me to start first by saying that every woman and every man who wear a uniform and receive the order from their commander-in-chief should have our respect, regardless the reason, good or bad. More important, they need to be remembered every day, not only on Memorial Day or on Veterans Day. In less than a month from today, we will celebrate Veterans Day, but in Europe we call the armistice, end of World War I, which was signed on the 11th month of the year 1918, on the 11th day of the month, at 11 a.m. in a passenger rail car in Compiègne, France, 100 years ago. The 29th Division on April 6, 1917, was getting involved when the Americans decided to be part of World War I. My grandfather, who was in World War I, wrote to my grandmother that he will be back home sooner because the Americans are coming to help us. But that doesn't forget that 170 officers on 5,690 enlisted men of the 29th Division were killed or wounded. In 15 years that I am involved with the 29th Division, I never heard this number. Do not forget them on November 11. Regarding World War II, I hope that everybody in this room have been seeing the movie Dunkirk. During this period, France lost 120,000 men who have sacrificed their lives in vain to save their country. The one of Dunkirk who did not escape and died, POW. Three very important numbers need to be remembered related to World War I, but direct consequences on World War II. The British lost 860,000 men. The USA, 105,000. The French, 1.2 million. How do you recreate a generation of soldiers in 22 years, 1918, 1940? I have seen through the eyes of a 5-year-old boy the atrocity of war. I have known what it is to have lost freedom, days of darkness and despair under the brute strength of tyranny. My people found itself suddenly deprived of liberty and freedom. The future looked bleak and seemed to be no reason for hope. Resist and fight, General de Gaulle said on the BBC on June 18, 1940. By the way, if the Germans found you listening to the BBC, you will end up in jail. After what my father heard, he decided to join de Gaulle to make sure that France was still there and will fight. He left in a fishing boat to England. He was one of the first to have done this. The French resistance, as we call them, the Army of the Shadows, that he helped to organize from London, and when he was in France, by creating groups which did not know each other for obvious reasons. And avoid stupid acts, like shooting a German officer in the metro, which resulted by 20 people minimum taken in random and shot on the spot. It was not the way to win the war. From that time my father left, my mother lived as a widow. She was the only one who knew that he was alive. The rest of the family, including my grandparents, so that he has been killed during the invasion of France by the Germans. I didn't know that I had a father. When he left, I was 1 year old. Where he was, I would not be here today if the German knew. All family will have been tortured. For sure, they will have used me to make my mother talk. Imagine what they will have done. Due to our family connection, they changed his personal papers, including a death certificate. He asked my sister and I to put the certificate on his coffin when he really died. It happened in 1993. My mother decided to move to our house in Normandy in August 1943. Going more and more difficult to find food and dangerous in Paris, with many checkpoints, generally with French police, which were working with the German. Let me briefly tell you what is under the Nazi occupation. Every Saturday by bicycle, my mother was going outside of Paris to a farm to get some bread, milk, eggs, and ham. She was very nervous to go through the checkpoint. She knew what happened if a German soldier found out something, anything, that he does not like. Many years later, she told me that she was afraid to have her body language betray the secret that she had. A simple mistake on your ID and you are taken away. Nobody will know where you are, and my mother was very afraid that it happened to her. When you were in Paris at a bakery, you could spend 3 hours, 4 hours for getting a small piece of bread. And you need to have a lot of money because many people were taking advantage. We have tonight a live example of how it was dangerous to be in the street of Paris. Dr. Marlene Moriarty, her mother was French, a member of the underground. In 1942, she was picked up by the Gestapo with propaganda paper against the German. She never came home. 6 months in the solitary confinement in the hand of the Gestapo, then in 1943, sent to Germany to a camp for hard labor. Her family never knew what happened to her during this year. She was liberated in 1945. Marlene is going through the French and German archive to find out what happened to her mother. She is planning to write a book about her mother. But in the good side, we knew what Occupy Europe was not alone. Behind us, a vast empire could make common cause. The British Empire, which commanded the sea, and of course, the immense industrial resource of the United States. On June 6, 1944, under the command of General Eisenhower, 70,000 American soldiers, together with British, Canadian, French, and other allies, their flag are in Bedford, the 11th Allied flag. They set foot on the beaches of Normandy. Our American allies were following the path of Pershing, army during World War I, and answering the call of Lafayette during the War of Independence. Like the men of Rochambeau in Yorktown, they all crossed the sea in the service of liberty. The success of D-Day, Omaha, Utah, Gold, Juno, Swerve, this name resonates today for the European people as synonym of freedom. A freedom paid dearly by those who fell in the sand and never rise again. 2,350 dead, laid to rest in the Omaha Beach Cemetery. This is not a day that I don't think about them. Thanks to them, I finally found that I had a father. When the German invaded in 1940, They did not have any fight. In Belgium, Netherlands, and France, our army were not ready to face another war. Nothing was destroyed by the Germans, but by the Allies to crush the German occupation. They bombed France, Belgium, and Netherlands from 1942 to 1945. That is why French people and others, regardless of having housing, robbers, having lost their livelihood, they welcomed the soldier with a glass of wine without asking their ID if they could drink, or hugs. The building, the house, the factory, they can be rebuilt. But if you lost your freedom, that is very hard to get it back. After spending 15 hours in the basement of our house, I had my first contact with the GI at 1700 hours on June 6, 1944. I was surprised to see my mother giving him a hug to him because we were not going close to all these men in uniform. They were German, except on Sunday morning at church where some German soldiers attended. I repeat, some German soldiers attended. What does that mean? They were worshipping the same God than us. And to every D-Day World War II veteran asks the question, what they would have done if they have knew where my father was. And all of them, World War II here, World War II here, they answer to me and say, they would have done their job, meaning take us, torture, or eventually shot us on the spot. When she gave him a hug because we were not going close, except as I explained you on the Sunday. But why we were going on Sunday? Because Father, the Mass was said in Latin at that time, the sermon in French. And Father Paul has some word which was for my mother to tell her where was my father. Later on, I learned that Father Paul was a member of the underground. I did not teach the difference of the uniform. For me, everyone who wore a uniform was a bad guy. Very fast, I knew that he was a good one. Got my first piece of chocolate. And I learned my first American word. Hershey. He taught me also to say freedom. The following day, as I and some kids of the village, we were running after every Jeep, GMC truck, screaming, Hershey freedom, Hershey freedom. The GI gave us also gum. My first one, I swallowed it. It took me a day to understand how to blow bubbles with it. And the GI gave up his coaching because we didn't understand how to do it. Ladies and gentlemen, France does not forget every town which has been liberated at a monument in the honor of the troops. Every year they had a ceremony. If you go to Saint-Lô, Sister City with Roanoke, which was liberated mostly by the 29th Division on July 17, 1944, you will assist at the parade. By the way, to go from Omaha to Saint-Lô today, it takes you 1 hour. It takes them 6 weeks to arrive in Saint-Lô, so you can imagine the fight that they've gone through. The students of France, on the contrary, occupied know the name of Eisenhower, Bradley, Patton, Churchill, even Montgomery. I'm French. They know what they did for the freedom that we enjoy today. We have 12 US cemeteries in France, 5 for World War I, 7 for World War II. Every year, on May 8th, end of World War II, on November 11, end of World War I. The flag at each tombstone are replaced by the local school. I have here two flags, which are always on the tombstone. They were on the front of Bedford Oback, one of the Bedford boys. His brother was missing in action, and the superintendent gave me these two flags. That was in 2004, and I cherish them, and we get also two for Lucy Bogus, the sister of the brother Oback. The D-Day Memorial has been built 57 years after. What's happened? The National Memorial in Washington, D.C., 60 years after. How many heroes of mine, World War II, have not seen any recognition from their native country? In 1984, when I talk about that, I decided to do a luncheon and a dinner. And every year, I do that the same. That's my way to tell them thank you. World War II was not a political war. It was a high moral value war. They were stopping a madman Hitler who killed millions of people because they don't have the same religion or the same color of skin. The Japan, which is not a Christian country, they were doing the same. You were not there to occupy. We didn't have our oil. You were there to give us back the freedom. We should not forget also that you came to stop another country ready to take our freedom, USSR. Stalin was our ally for some time, but he was ready to take all Europe if the D-Day was not a success. And that's the reason why we can say that we win more than we expect. D-Day was the preview before the Cold War, was a result of that. USSR has been always against us, and if I may, even today. That is why I cannot forget, and I will not. France has never forgotten. Thanks to them, the ideals upon which our two nations have been founded remain the solid base of our society. As we are here living in a free society, we should remember the soldier who fell and never arose again. They made the ultimate sacrifice, among them the Bedford boys. They were young men in the prime of their lives. They served their country and its core value in the world's most powerful and well-trained army. They were also boyfriends, good sons, nephews, who have left behind the warmth and the love of their home. The future was stolen from them by a faraway war. They fought for universal value, and in defending the battered Europe under the Nazi yoke, they defended the very foundation of their nation and their country, collective, past and future. They were welcomed by the 500,000 men and women of the French resistance. I had the privilege to have met General Eisenhower when I was 12 years old, where he was living in a village called Marne-la-Coquette, where my father was the mayor during the time that he was the head of the ship. And when he knew that my birthday was on June 5, he looked at me and said, "Bernard, your father didn't tell us that your birthday was on the 5. We could come to celebrate with you." And I looked at him and I said, "General, you make enough noise the next day." When Hitler realized that Normandy was the real thing, because he was convinced that we were coming, you were coming through Dunkirk, which when you look at a map, it's logical. 35 miles from the coast of England, Normandy, and England, 120 miles. He ordered his SS division, Panzer Division, Das Reich, who was on the south of the beaches, to rush to Normandy. The resistance blew up the rail track. The SS, as a revenge, put 755 men, women, children on the village of Oradour-sur-Glane in the church and burned it. The village has never been rebuilt, it's kept as a memorial. As a matter of fact, during the whole war of Normandy, the Battle of Normandy, 15,000 civilians had died during the Battle of Normandy. On the behalf of the French people, and for me as a dual citizen, allow me to say once again, thank you, America. But may I remind you, sorry, it's a history lesson tonight, but may I remind you that France has never been at war with the USA. We have been married for 242 years. Well, I will admit we need a marriage counselor at least once a year. As a migrant who decide to stay in the USA in 1979 to start a company, and after having met my future ex-wife, may I say, America has been always great. America is great. America will be always great. So, God bless the United States of America. Vive la France. Thank you so much.